Adolf Hitler demanded genetic purity from an entire nation. Yet his own father was born illegitimate, with no confirmed paternity, under a completely different surname. When DNA linked to Hitler's bloodline made global headlines, geneticists weren't shocked by what it revealed. They were alarmed by how wildly the public misread it. The real story begins not in a lab, but with a parish record from 1837. In Nazi Germany, the idea of blood purity was not just a slogan, it was codified in law and drilled into public consciousness. A 1935 poster, issued after the Nuremberg laws, declared that only those of German or related blood could be full citizens. The message was unmistakable. Ancestry determined worth. Party rallies and classroom charts traced family trees, searching for even a hint of so-called foreign blood. In September 1936, Hitler stood before thousands at Nuremberg and warned, "If the German people do not ensure that the blood which binds them remains pure, then it is time for us to rise against the adulteration by foreign mixtures." The Reich citizenship law, passed in 1935, stripped Jews and others of their rights, while the 1938 Erbgesundheitsgesetz mandated sterilization for those deemed genetically unfit. Propaganda films, textbooks and newspapers hammered home the message: racial purity was the foundation of the state. Genealogical charts became part of marriage applications and school assignments. Even distant rumors of non-Aryan ancestry could destroy a career, or worse. The regime demanded absolute certainty from every citizen about their lineage, an iron standard that few families, even Hitler's own, could ever truly meet. The doctrine of purity was not just political, it was personal, enforced with bureaucratic precision and public spectacle. Yet this demand for flawless ancestry stood in stark contrast to the messy, uncertain records and tangled relationships found in Hitler's own family tree, a contradiction that would become glaring as the story unfolded. Alois Schicklgruber entered the world on June 7, 1837, in the hamlet of Strones, Lower Austria. His baptismal record, preserved in the parish register, left a blank where the father's name belonged. Instead, the priest wrote, "illegitimate." For Maria Anna Schicklgruber, a 42-year-old peasant woman working as a farmhand, this meant her son carried the legal and social burdens of illegitimacy in rural Austria. The family's economic standing was modest. Maria Anna's name appears in tax rolls as a low-income contributor, offering only a few bushels of wheat to the parish tithe. 5 years after Alois's birth, in 1842, Maria Anna married Johann Georg Hiedler, a journeyman miller. Yet the marriage certificate makes no mention of Alois's paternity, and the boy remained registered as Schicklgruber. For decades, his legal status and surname reflected ambiguity of his origins. The turning point came in 1877, when Alois, now an adult civil servant, petitioned the district court for a formal name change. He requested to be recognized as the son of his mother's late husband, Johann Georg Hiedler. The court approved the petition on June 3, 1877, issuing a decree that allowed Alois to adopt the surname Hitler, a variant spelling of Hiedler. The decree did not resolve the question of biological paternity. It simply conferred legal legitimacy, enabling Alois to inherit and to climb the social ladder. The official record, then, is clear about the legal steps but silent on genetics. No civil registration from the time can confirm who Alois's father was. The gap in documentation and the maneuvering to fill it would echo through the next generation, leaving a factual uncertainty at the root of the Hitler family tree. This unresolved lineage stands in stark contrast to the rigid standards of ancestry that later defined Nazi ideology, exposing the limits of bureaucratic and scientific certainty in matters of blood. In 1885, the parish records of Braunau am Inn registered a marriage that required more than the usual paperwork. Alois Hitler, whose own paternity had never been genetically resolved, sought to wed Clara Polzel, a woman already closely tied to his family by blood. The Catholic Church, following canonical law, prohibited marriages between close relatives without explicit permission. Alois and Clara were second cousins once removed, both descending from the Hitler line that Alois had only recently claimed through legal channels. To proceed, they needed an ecclesiastical dispensation, which was granted that year by the Bishop of Linz. The document, preserved in diocesan archives, formally acknowledged the degree of kinship and cleared the way for their union. Such dispensations were not unusual in rural Upper Austria, where small communities and limited mobility often meant a narrow pool of eligible spouses. Parish registers from the region show repeated cousin marriages, weaving a dense web of interrelated families. For the Hitler and Polzl branches, this pattern produced a family tree marked by overlapping lines and recurring surnames. Genealogists tracing the ancestry of Adolf Hitler encounter the same names: Schicklgruber, Hiedler, Polzl, looping back on themselves across generations. This endogamy, a common feature of peasant life, complicates any attempt to draw clean genetic boundaries. Rather than a lineage defined by isolation or purity, the records point to a background shaped by necessity, geography, and the customs of the time. The very union that produced Adolf Hitler stands as a reminder. In the world of rural Austria, family trees rarely grew in straight lines. In August 2010, news outlets around the world ran with a headline: DNA from Hitler's alleged relatives revealed a haplogroup, E1b1b, described as rare in Germany but common among Jews and North Africans. Journalists repeated the claim that this single Y chromosome marker exposed a hidden ancestry, fueling stories that Hitler's own blood might contradict everything he preached. But behind the headlines, the scientific foundation was shady at best. The supposed DNA came from distant male line relatives, not from Hitler himself. No independent genealogical verification or chain of custody documentation was ever published. The testing, conducted for a Belgian magazine, never underwent peer review and relied on anonymous samples, leaving the core claim unsubstantiated. Geneticists at the Max Planck Institute, including Dr. Johannes Kraus, quickly cautioned that Y-DNA haplogroups like E1b1b track deep paternal ancestry, thousands of years back, not recent family history. E1b1b is found in up to 20% of Ashkenazi Jews, but also in Greeks, Albanians, and many Southern Europeans. It cannot be used to diagnose an individual's religion or ethnic identity. As Dr. Kraus explained in interviews, a haplogroup is not a label for a people. It is a marker for ancient migrations. The media's rush to draw sweeping conclusions from a single genetic marker ignored the basic scientific limitations. Without direct, authenticated DNA from Hitler or a verified male line descendant, any claims about his ancestry remain speculative. Haplogroups alone cannot resolve the tangled roots of his family tree. What they can reveal, at best, is a pattern shared by millions across Central Europe, a far cry from the myth of a pure or unique bloodline. The real story is not in the DNA itself, but in how easily its meaning was distorted to fit a narrative. The Frankenberger rumor began with a single, unverified claim made in 1949 by Hans Frank, Hitler's personal lawyer, and later the Governor-General of occupied Poland. Awaiting execution at Nuremberg, Frank wrote in his memoirs that Maria Anna Schicklgruber, Hitler's paternal grandmother, had worked as a servant for a Jewish family named Frankenberger in Graz. Frank suggested that Alois, Hitler's father, might have been the illegitimate son of a Jewish man from this household. The story proved irresistible to tabloids and conspiracy theorists, who repeated it for decades. Yet when historians turned to the archives, the evidence fell apart. Brigitte Heymann, a leading expert on Hitler's Vienna years, scoured parish registers, tax rolls, and municipal records for any trace of a Frankenberger family in Graz during the relevant years. She found nothing: no household by that name, no employment records, no payments for child support, and no indication that Jews were even allowed to reside in Graz at the time. Heymann and other scholars concluded that Frank's account was hearsay, likely invented or misremembered under the pressure of post-war interrogation. Despite its popularity, the Frankenberger theory stands on no historical foundation. Its persistence shows how easily rumors about Hitler's ancestry have been amplified, especially when they seem to contradict the regime's own racial dogma. The absence of documentation and the silence of the primary sources leave the story as legend, not fact. As the scientific search for Hitler's origins moved into the age of DNA, the Frankenberger myth would be recycled again, this time in genetic headlines that promised more certainty than the evidence could deliver. No authentic DNA sample from Adolf Hitler himself has ever been verified by the global scientific community. Forensic geneticists stress that even if a sample labeled as Hitler's appears, its value depends entirely on an unbroken, documented chain of custody, something that is missing from every high-profile claim to date. Attempts to use distant relatives' DNA or materials of uncertain origin cannot resolve the basic questions of his ancestry. As bioethicists point out, Y chromosome analysis can only trace one narrow paternal line, and only if the sample is from a proven, direct male line descendant. Even then, a Y DNA haplogroup is not a label for ethnicity, religion, or identity. It marks a branch point in deep human history, shared by millions, and says nothing about the cultural or personal choices of any individual. A full genome, if ever authenticated, would almost certainly reveal a pattern familiar to anyone with Central European roots, a mixture shaped by centuries of migration, village endogamy, and unresolved paternity, not the pure lineage Nazi ideology demanded. The scientific reality is that DNA cannot validate or invalidate ideas of racial purity. Instead, it exposes the emptiness of those claims and the dangers of reading ideology into genetic code. Today, every headline claiming to solve Hitler's ancestry risks repeating the same error, mistaking genetic fragments for concrete truths. Authentic DNA evidence remains elusive, and any verified result would almost certainly reveal ordinary mixed Central European roots, not a mythic bloodline. Precision matters because distortion fuels dangerous narratives. Share your thoughts below.